I call the meeting to order of the Public Utilities Commission, December 22nd, 2015. Our first order of business is to consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Commission held November 24th, 2015, and also the special meeting held on December 10th, 2015.
Mr. President, I'd offer a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Public Utilities Commission held November 24, 2015, and the special meeting held December 10, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the minutes of both the regular meeting of November 24th and the special meeting of December 10th. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting or motion carries. Next, we will have the utility operations report for the month of December from City Manager Gramitz.
All right, good evening, and just hit a few highlights that are probably not in the actual report itself. Wanted to just touch base that we did have a promotion. Jeff Falkins was promoted to Assistant Electric Distribution Supervisor in the last couple of weeks here. And on the issue of personnel, just note that the pay equity report was processed through. It's something we have to do every 3 to 5 years, depending on the law that we're currently under. And we passed, both the city and the PUC passed the pay equity, so we should be good for another, probably 5 years before we have to do the report again. And what that basically means is we try and identify where we've got male-dominated positions, and to make sure that there's no gender bias or underpayment to females or overpayment to males, kind of thing. We have to go through this big formula. We worked it through, checked with the state on the results, and they said, we're good to go. So that's good thing for us. The classification and compensation study through Springstead hit a little glitch. They ended up having to remove one of their staff from the process. They assured us that they'll pick up it was kind of the job description review and all that good stuff. They've got that. I believe they're working on getting that completed like it was supposed to have been maybe a couple of weeks ago. We had concerns that it wasn't going to be done in the timeline that they had proposed it to be done, or our deadline, and we know that to be a surety at this point in time. It is not going to be done by the end of the year. So what we are proposing is that when the classification and compensation study concludes, we anticipate probably later January that any adjustments be made at that time. Having said that, we don't anticipate there's going to be a whole lot of change, because we've been paying attention to classification and compensation, but there may be one or two that aren't quite right. The reason it tells me I think we're doing fairly well is because our pay equity report came out okay, so we definitely know we don't have any gender biases. So then the question is, are we keeping with the market? And for most, we believe we are, because we've been comparing ourselves every year to other communities that have the same position. So I think we're going to be okay, but we'll see come into January, first part of February. I did just want to touch on one or two items that probably were not in the report. As we all probably are aware of, whenever we make a change and make rules and enforce things, sometimes we have unintended consequences. We also had intended consequences. The sump pump remediation program, where we're taking the water out of the sanitary sewer, for most locations is not a problem. They've got a location where they can pump the water out in their backyard, and it drains away, and everybody's happy. Some might even attach their sump pump water hose to the storm sewer system. Spend the money, dig it in, and they don't have to look at it again. Those that don't have the topography to deal with this, sometimes they take their hose and they run it out to the curb. And as we all know, in winter, water flowing out in the curb results in 4, 5, 6 inches of ice in the gutters, and creates problems downstream in the curb line until it hits the storm sewer. So we have a couple of locations that we'll be looking at, and we may have to come back and get through this first winter by granting, a variance to the regulation, and then we'll have to look at them again in the spring and see if there are alternatives. We don't want to enforce this to the point where it makes public safety an issue. And in the wintertime, if there's any time that you probably could put sump pump water in, it is probably the wintertime. It's not raining like it does in the summer. So we're gonna, enforce it, but then look at where it just doesn't make sense. We'll be coming back to you in, January, February, March, April with a plan on how to deal with these the locations that are creating safety hazards in our streets. So just one of
I've
those.
noticed a couple.
Yeah. They're out there. If you drive around or walk around, particular walkers have been bringing it to our attention that you can't walk down that street, you can't walk down that area because of the ice jams. So we'll be identifying those if it gets cold enough to freeze again, and we'll be bringing that to the PUC at some point in the future. So best of intentions, but there are a few locations that just aren't working out, and we'll have to deal with that. Electric distribution, just wanted to point out that they are currently working on replacing the high-pressure sodium streetlights. Those are the yellow-toned lights you'll see out there when we've got the LED in some parts of the community that we've started doing. We'll probably be placing a little bit more emphasis on that. Quite simply, the high-pressure sodium manufacturers are kind of walking away from replacements, kind of like the incandescent light bulbs. They're going to have to go to something else because they won't be allowed to even be used. Well, in this particular case, the manufacturers aren't making them kind of anymore. So what we'll be doing is we'll be probably taking down more of the high-pressure sodium lights than necessary to put up LED lights, and then using the ones that we take down to fix the other ones that are still up. And so we'll be approaching that more aggressively than we probably had thought. It was a plan, that we were going to do this, but I think we're going to have to speed up the plan just because of the availability of the light fixtures themselves, the bulb itself. And then lastly, just a note, in the gas department, we're continuing to work on, a meter issue on the Hutchinson gas pipeline that was reading incorrectly. We've gotten to the bottom. We know what the problem is, and we're continuing to sort that out between the city of New Ulm and the city of Hutchinson Public Utility. And then just as a kind of heads up, we're looking at the capacity contract language between the city and Hutchinson PUC as it relates to both Fairfax and Heartland. They've asked us to look at that, and so we're gonna be working on that probably in the next month or so. And so that would be I think the updates as I see them that are probably not included in your packet that you have.
Okay, thank you. I would like to also congratulate the PUC Employee of the Month, Steve Anderson. Steve is a results analyst, electric production department, and has been employed by the PUC since May of 2006. Congratulations, Steve Anderson.
I'd offer the motion to receive and order filed the report regarding utility operations during the month of December 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second to receive and order filed the utility operations report. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3A, receive a notice that the city PUC's mileage reimbursement rate is decreasing to 54 cents per mile, effective January 1, 2016, concurrent with mileage rate set by the United States IRS.
I'll move to receive the notice that the city/public utilities mileage reimbursement rate is decreasing to 54 cents per mile effective January 1st, 2016, concurrent with the mileage rate set by the United States Internal Revenue Service.
I'll second.
Okay. We have motion and second to receive notice about the mileage reimbursement rate decreasing to 54 cents per the IRS. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is resolution adopting the 2016 budget for the New Ulm Public Utilities.
I'd offer the motion to approve the resolution and waive the reading adopting the 2016 budget for New Ulm Public Utilities.
Second.
Okay, motion second to approve the resolution, waive the reading, adopting the 2016 budget for the New Ulm Public Utilities. Finance Director, you call a roll.
Commissioner Baranick,
Yes.
Commissioner Fingeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Heine,
Yes.
Commissioner Swan,
Yes.
President Steinke.
Yes. Item 4B, we'll consider a recommendation from the Personnel Committee approving a general wage adjustment for non-unionized full-time public employees.
Mr. President and Commission members, the general wage adjustment is being recommended at 2% effective January 1. The current IBW labor contract provides for a 2% wage increase. I believe this is the last year of this union agreement, so we'll be looking at that towards the end of 2016. But as I noted earlier, the pay equity is one of those things we're required by the state of Minnesota to comply with. And so the recommendation matches the labor union contract, because if you raise one or lower the other, differently, you then run the risk of falling out of the pay equity. So it just mirrored what the labor contract was at this point in time at 2%. The only other thing I would add is that this doesn't impact anything that the PUC, has to fund or anything like that. We did add an additional dental program to the list. I think we had 2 programs that employees could pay for on their own. We did add a third one, which was way lower cost than the other 2 and provided substantially better coverage. So if you hear something about, dental coverage, it's not funded by the PUC. It's funded 100% by the employee, and it's optional on their part. We did receive more than enough employees to do the program because they needed a minimum floor, and we got quite a few employees that wanted to either do the basic or the higher level program that they offered. But so if you hear that, it really is not a financial thing on the PUC side, but it was an additional program being offered to the employee.
Is the, wa-
President, go ahead.
is the wage increase for exempt, non-exempt, or both?
It's for non-unionized full-time
So
employees.
salary, non-union salary and non-union hourly?
Yeah. Yep.
Does everyone get automatically 2%, or is that the average?
No, it's 2% across the board.
Okay.
Mr. President, I'd offer the motion approving a general wage adjustment for non-unionized full-time employees of 2% effective January 1, 2016.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve general wage adjustment of 2% for non-unionized full-time employees effective January 1, 2016. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will consider authorizing the city manager to notify the successful bidder for the boiler number 2 burner upgrades.
As you have before you on the issue sheet, you've got 3 bids received for the boiler number 2 upgrade. And you'll notice that, some didn't provide a base price and some didn't provide options. And after review by our consultant, Sergeant Lundy, they did the evaluation. And even though Corval and Riley Power may have a technical evaluation score higher than NAC, a score of 89.2 is more than adequate to be considered for this type of work. So the recommendation from Sergeant Lundy would be that we go with NAC to perform the necessary system work that we specified. You'll note that, I mean, they're in the high end of good at 89%. They're almost in the exceptional category. But you also note that, you know, we have adequate funds. If memory serves correctly, we had, I think, $700,000 allocated. And the lowest bid price came in at $712, which is, you always hope, you know, that it's under your estimated project cost, but this is reasonably close.
Mr. President, I'd offer the motion authorizing the city manager to notify NAC of Vadnais Heights, Minnesota, that they are the successful bidder for the Boiler 2 burner upgrade project with a base bid of $712,000.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second to authorize city manager to notify NAC that they are the successful bidder for the boiler number 2 burner upgrade project at $712,000. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4D, will consider a resolution approving an agreement between the New Ulm Public Utilities and the Minnesota Valley Action Council, establishing terms for delivery of low-income measures as part of the conservation improvement programs for the 2016 year, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
Williams here.
Yes, William Swanson.
Thank you, Commissioners. Well, I'd just like to add a few minor comments to the agenda. Looking at this year's spending, we've spent for the 2015 year program $16,350. And there is an additional amount allowed for this year. However, the Minnesota Valley Action Council staff have found that to be a reasonable stopping point in order to submit all of those items within this budget year. And I guess the major changes for the 2016 year program would just be some changes to the maximum amounts allowed, and then a decrease from the $22,300 for the 2015 year to the $12,500. And I'd be available to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
I'd offer the motion to adopt the resolution and waive reading, approving the agreement between New Ulm Public Utilities and Minnesota Valley Action Council effective January 1, 2016 through December 31, 2016 to deliver low-income measures for the 2016 year and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to adopt the resolution, waive the reading, to approve the agreement between the PUC and the Minnesota Valley Action Council effective January 1 through December 31 of 2016. Is there any further discussion? Okay, otherwise, Finance Director, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Baranick,
Yes.
Commissioner Finland,
Yes.
Commissioner Heine,
Yes.
Commissioner Swan,
Yes.
President Steinke.
Yes.
Shoot,
Okay.
I should have taken this one.
Next item is 4E. Will consider authorizing the purchase of software updates for Laserfish Electronic Document Management System. And IT Supervisor Nate Barron.
Good evening. Our current Laserfish system is, some background first. Our Laserfish system is our electronic document management system. And so this is the system that we scan our documents into to convert them from physical copy into digital copy. It's an archival system for one part, but it's also a content system that we can do quite a number of things in. Our current system is an old version. This update will bring us up to the most recent supported version of the software. Some additional benefits is that the newer versions include more features than the old version did. The old version didn't come with those things, and the new one does. There is some additional software included in this as well called Laserfiche Forms, and that gives us more capabilities to continue our initiatives to reduce paper and increase efficiency. So I am available for any questions if you have them.
In
about
today's
this.
world, what is considered an old, what does old mean? 3
Right.
months.
This version, I did not look to see what the age of the system is. I gauge it by what it's supported on. Next year, we're planning on upgrading quite a number of our servers to the most recent version of Windows Server. And if you look at the what the manufacturer supports Laserfiche to be run on, it is not supported on the newer version. So we pay a considerable amount of money for them to support us, and if we don't have the right versions on the right versions, they'll say, tough luck. So
They get you coming and going, in other words.
a little bit, I'm
Are you,
afraid.
approximate 3 years, you think?
I believe so. Reg, do you have any recollection of this? Of course, predates me.
Of when we actually got it the first time, it was
Yeah.
about 2000, end of 2007, beginning of 2008, I believe.
And,
So,
and we've had some version updates in the meantime. The current version we're on, they have, I believe that was released in 2013. So the current version that we're on has at least been in service for that long.
And the budget issue says that you've got maybe from overruns last year that we didn't spend. It wasn't part of the 2016 budget, but we've got money. That's okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And is this a one-time cost? Is there ongoing costs in addition to the 41?
There are ongoing costs. The way that the support works is there's a percentage of the initial cost that's charged every year as a support fee. Our current support fees are just about $7,478. Because there's some additional software that we'd be purchasing with this, that does increase our annual cost to about $12,666 a year. But that is money that we have budgeted for in our support funds.
I'd offer the motion to authorize the purchase of software updates for Laserfiche from OPG-3 in the amount of $40,903.81.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to authorize the purchase of software updates for Laserfiche for $40,903.81. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4F, review of the city code section 2.50, subdivision 11, for potential recommendation to the city council for an amendment to the city code allowing for one or more utility connections or sales outside the corporate boundary of the city of New Ulm.
Yeah, this is an item that was asked to be placed on the agenda for tonight to see if, technology, utilities have changed since the last time it was brought up. And I think the last time we talked about this would have been, I know we talked about it when we did the city charter revision. The restriction does not show up in the city charter, and that was why it was being discussed when the charter was being reviewed and changed, because everybody thought it was in the charter, and that was the time to change it. But it's actually found in City Code 2.50. What the request is to, I think, the basic request is to allow gas sales to occur outside the corporate boundary of the city of New Ulm. And it's really not intended for water or sewer, and for all practical purposes, electricity has a electric service territory, so we can only go so far with our electric. Where gas, we can go wherever we want, and water and sewer, we can go wherever we want. the city code is in place for the basic concept of people who live on the skirts of the community, may pay township taxes, but yet they use all the city services. And so utilities, even in cities that just have water and sewer, access to water and sewer has historically been the leverage to say you have to be annexed into the city if you want city water and city sewer. Now in New Ulm, because we have gas and electric, that falls into the same category. Whereas, cities that just have water and sewer may have a private supplier of gas and a private supplier of electricity, that it's not public at all. It could be if it was an REA or an REC, but in all likelihood it's Xcel Energy or Minigasco or one of those entities, all right? The last time this was brought up, might have been, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and the decision was made that we were not going to allow gas sales to go outside the city for individual customer benefit. We do allow sales to another city. So in this particular case, we work with the city of Fairfax, and this is kind of where this came from originally. I think that's been about 11 years ago, is we work through Fairfax's gas utility so that Fairfax could in turn sell gas to Heartland Corn Products. Now, Heartland Corn Products came to the city of New Ulm and said, we'd like to get gas from you. And we said, well, we can't do that because you're outside of our border, our boundary, plus you're a private entity. But we could if we went through Fairfax, which is ultimately what happened. The city also has wastewater services with the city of Cortland. It doesn't bill the residents of Cortland, it bills the city of Cortland, and then Cortland in turn bills its residents. So we do provide utility service outside our boundary, but it's to another city, another entity, rather than customer itself. So as time's gone by, we did have a change in our electric service territory, and so we know things change through time, and there are customers that probably we might be interested in serving as far as gas is concerned. Gas is kind of that wherever you want to go. It's a regulated industry, but it's not inhibited like electric, where we have a service territory. Gas can go wherever it wants to go. And so there's some activity in Nicola County that raised the question of, is that something that we wanted to look at rather than another organization providing gas to other customers? And we said, well, as it currently stands, the city code says, no, we can't do that. So the question is before you is if you are interested in looking at that as the PUC, that then a recommendation would go to the city council to consider amending the city code to allow that. Currently, the city council would be if they said no, it wouldn't happen. But you can't, the PUC can't do it on its own. So it has to be done by the city council authorizing that it could go outside the city limits. So, at this point in time, we don't necessarily have any customers lined up that you would say, yeah, if we can get a pipe in the ground next year, they'll take our gas. We really don't have that. It's really a question of, do we want to consider that? Is this the time where we say, water and sewer, yeah, that's still the way it should be, but gas is not the same as water and sewer historically. And so if you look at like the state of Minnesota, you'll see almost every city, even the metro cities, have water. Maybe they got the Metropolitan Council doing sewer, but most cities have their own water and sewer, right? And so we got 817 cities in the state of Minnesota, and there's probably at least 750 water and sewer systems. There's approximately, I believe, 80 municipally owned electric systems. and there's roughly 40 municipally owned gas systems. So that just kind of tells you, you know, cities have long been in water and sewer, but not that many cities are in electric, and really less number of cities are in gas. So there's a lot of private entities out there serving all kinds of people. So then the question comes in is, do you think we should try and open that up so that we could serve gas outside the city, or just leave it the way it is and operate as we currently are? That the only way you're going to get municipally provided gas, electric, and water and sewer is if you're annexed into the city. So that's in essence the short question. I know it took a while for me to say it and actually get it out on the table, but there is, you know, the industry has changed. You know, the whole, you know, the world has changed. Internet, we can talk to people all the way across the world, and yet we can't sell gas to somebody 10 feet outside our corporate boundary. So is that something to think about?
So, a couple questions. First question being, would it be our choice on if we were to move forward to be able to provide outside the city boundaries? Would it be our choice to say, yes, we would provide to Cortland, but no, we wouldn't provide to every other individual who doesn't want to be annexed but says, well, you're giving it to Cortland, so I want it too?
I think it's your choice to do that, but I think if you're driven by the potential to increase your revenues in the gas utility, anybody reasonably close that it would pay for itself within, you know, the appropriate amount of time, you would say, yeah, we'd want to hook you up. So if your pipe is going down Highway 14, let's say to Cortland, you know, you'd be crazy not to bring in anybody that's adjacent to Highway 14. Just to say, I'm going to serve Cortland and nobody else. You would pick up everybody you could along the way.
Right. So then the second question is, when it comes to the infrastructure of getting gas to a Cortland, is that something that we look at from an analysis standpoint as how many years does it take to pay that off, or is that a cost that we then pass on to those customers where we've now put a gas line all the way to Cortland?
I think typically it'd be, you know, how many years would it take to pay that off? Okay. Based on the estimated new customers.
Right, and then
Yeah,
that's the decision that we make whether we
Yep.
do it or not.
Yep, and if you sit there and say it's gonna take 20 years to pay itself back, you probably would say, no, that's too big of a leap, we probably wouldn't do it. But if it was a 2.5-year payback, you'd probably say that would be a really good investment to make in putting pipe in the ground and serving and having more customers and in essence, more revenue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems that we have as a business is with basically flat revenue and ever increasing costs to maintain the infrastructure, you're kind of trapped, and I think it's foolish not to be able to allow yourself to expand if it makes sense to do so economically. So, I mean, I might say, you might say I might move to recommend that the city council amend the city charter section 2.5 to allow any utility to be able to expand outside the corporate boundary of the city of New Ulm.
I would second that motion.
Okay.
Mr. President, I guess I'm not so sure. I don't like the any in there. I mean, there's still, I think, the old argument about having to be annexed within the city so they can pay property taxes also is important. So if you made it too easy for an individual a mile out to get our utilities but not pay taxes here, I guess I have a little bit of a problem with that.
Well, so it has to make economic sense to do that. So you wouldn't spend, to Brian's point, the return on investment is so long then that it doesn't make sense, you wouldn't do it. But if it was, let's just say it was 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna gain profits that, a portion of which supplement the city coffers anyway from that property. Why wouldn't we do that?
Well, I guess I don't know what those profits are. We're talking about a number that I don't know what that number is or what it could be. I guess I'd like a little bit more information on that part of it. I mean, it's always made sense to me that you want property taxes to come in with this thing too, not just the utilities.
Yeah, and that's the historical leverage that it's been used for, is that, that if you wanna reap the benefits of all the investment we put in electric and gas and water and sewer, if you wanna receive that benefit, then you gotta join the club.
But that should be in the rate that we charge for that service.
Yeah, so can we charge a separate rate if you're not annexed? into
Are
the
you
city of New
uncomfortable?
I don't
You
believe
had
so.
mentioned any
Yeah,
utility.
yeah.
If we're just talking specifically gas,
Well, when I first read this, I thought it was specifically for, like we do with the sewer to Cortland, for instance. And that came about, I think, because they had to replace their septic tanks many years ago, and it was just cheaper for Cortland to put in lines and
Yeah.
get it to New Ulm. That's kind of where that came from. No, just the way this is, again, if it just went to Cortland, for instance, now you're out there 7-8 miles. But if you're gonna supply gas and electricity to people a half mile out from town, I have trouble with that.
Well, how would you economically justify that?
How would I
That's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
how would you, it's, whatever it is, $75 a foot to run a pipe from the main line to the house,
Mhm,
you have to have enough sales to justify that.
mhm,
And, which is the reason exactly why you would never do that.
mhm.
That's where my question of our discretion comes in. Because you lay a pipe all the way out to Cortland and then you spread it across all those homes versus to 15 different homes that are all half a mile outside the city.
Well, I don't know what the customer out there now is paying if a truck comes on to his house and fills up his big tank he's got back in his backyard. Is there a big difference between that and what we'd be charging, for instance?
I believe propane is much higher. Maybe our finance director could elucidate us on that.
or
Enlighten
volatile.
me, Reg.
President Steinke and commissioners, basically right now, you would have two choices. You can either take out a contract before the winter starts, which is what I
Mhm.
would normally do.
Sure.
Or you can take your chances
Mhm.
and not do a contract and see where the price falls as you need to be filled with propane.
Yeah.
Generally, from working with Pat Rossi in the past, we were kind of taking a look at this question, and generally, natural gas was running much cheaper than propane, and I don't think that's any difference right now. I can't remember what he said the factor was, but I thought it was a pretty good percentage that it would have to be greater because of the BTUs and so forth, but I can't remember exactly how that works. I don't know if anybody from,
I don't have a chart with me, but natural gas price is lower per BTU than propane right now. But that would be up to the customer to change over
right,
and be willing to propane also.
so unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't have those calculations
Yeah.
as to how that works out, but I know in the past it would have saved quite a bit to be able to be on natural gas.
I have a question about the impact of the motion. The motion is to recommend to the city council that we change the code, which would open up more options to the PUC in the city. That's not necessarily the same thing as saying that we decide today as a commission that we're gonna go ahead with this project. Is that correct?
Correct.
That-
Correct.
Okay,
That's a
and-
good point.
'cause
This
I-
would just allow it to happen.
Right.
It may never, ever happen.
Well, and all good points being made about the decision whether or not to go ahead with it, but we have a long-term power committee in place, and it seems like it should be a studied event, and we should take the time to figure out, does it fit into our strategic plan? Obviously, generating more revenue would be a good idea, but, maybe more than just a meeting tonight kind of setting is where we would make that decision. But if we open it up, without obligating ourselves to commit to the project, then it would seem like a reasonable thing to go ahead with.
Maybe
us the
the
flexibility.
word that bothers me in that motion is to recommend, maybe if that was changed to study, I'd be willing, and then also the long-term power could take a look at it. It's a big change from what we've traditionally have done here.
Well, we do have a motion and second that is before the commission right now. Are you interested in changing your motion, or do you want to
Well, I'm trying to think
vote
what the
on it
rules
as-
are here, so if we table the motion pending study by the long-term power committee,
Yeah, you could do that.
so
You can withdraw, do you wish to withdraw your motion, or just revise it? I'm not sure what the correct. Do we need to just,
You can do whichever one you wanted to do, but I think withdrawing your motion would be the easiest one. Then you just start over with what.
okay,
what you
so I'll withdraw the motion.
But is that okay with the second? Did that occur?
It is.
okay.
Do I have to second his withdrawal? I don't know how that works.
I'd like this to, be studied by the long-term power and the city council, so they're on top of it now already, so it doesn't have to all at once get in front of them. I mean, at least for them to think about it. So maybe the motion would read to study the issue of allowing utilities, all or some, to be able to expand outside the corporate boundary of the city of New Ulm. And again, I think to clarify, to me, I thought we were just talking about a city like Cortland. I did not know we were talking about individuals,
Well,
households.
Yeah, to clarify that, if Cortland had a gas utility, then we would go to Cortland
Yes,
and they could then in turn provide gas to their citizens.
right.
But since Cortland doesn't have a gas utility,
Mhm.
we would have to go directly to the citizens, and that's the difference on something like this.
Mhm.
Because they had because they set up a sewer utility,
Mhm.
we could then provide sewer to them,
Right.
and then they would bill their own residents. But in this particular case, the request was for the gas utility specifically, but
Mhm.
I left it open for, discussion as to all or one or none. That it would be a direct, because there'd be no sense for, a community like Cortland to create a gas utility and go through all that work just to process this through.
Is there any time issue involved in this matter right now? Is there a decision that's going to be made in a certain point in time that would require that we need to be ready? With
Well, I think generally speaking that there are other people that are probably looking at, providing gas service in Nicollet County. Again, I don't know if they're ready to break ground in 2 years or 3 years, or, I don't have a timing issue for that.
Okay.
But I guess I think, like the idea of doing a little bit more study on this we just had a report from myself talking about the unintended consequences of something that we thought was just like
Mhm.
a slam dunk, get some pump water out of the sanitary sewer, and then winter shows up and you go like, oh, that wasn't such a good idea. So maybe some time spent on looking how this would work and answering a few of the questions to the satisfaction of the PUC and the city council would be appropriate.
Okay,
How much time does it take to amend the city code if we decide?
All totaled, throwing in maybe a couple of weeks one way or the other, 3 months. Because you got the preparation of the ordinance, you've got the first reading, got second reading, adoption, and then it goes into effect 30 days after publication. So when you throw those times in there, you could be 2.5 months for sure, and possibly 3, depending on how long it takes to do certain parts of the act there.
Do I understand you right, Bill Brian? Do you have somebody right now asking and wants it right now?
Well, I don't have a customer asking right now.
Uh-huh.
I have somebody who's interested in seeing us expand
Gotcha.
because they see this as an opportunity, saying, how do we get it changed? And I said, well, the first thing to do would be to bring it to the PUC, and then on to the city council if that was the recommendation.
do we,
Did you have a motion in mind? or
We,
did you not?
I guess I'm
Trying to
looking
place
for,
it
I'm
together?
looking for a motion right now for,
My
how we
motion
wanna
would be
proceed.
to recommend that the city council and the long-term power study this issue of utilities outside of the city limits, and clarify that it could be one customer. Not likely, but it could be. I mean, you could get a large industry outside, and it'd be nice to get their tax dollars besides their utilities, is the other part of this thing, I think. Is that clear enough?
Do we have a second for the, that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, and the motion, we have a motion and a second recommending that the city council and the long-term power committee study the change to the city code section 2.50, which would allow the utility to expand, to be able to expand outside the corporate boundary of the city of New Ulm.
That'll work.
Okay? Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final item on the agenda is to consider acceptance of the list of claims paid and the approval of the list of claims to be paid.
Mr. President, I'd offer the motion to accept the list of claims paid in the amount of $2,360,490.24 and approve the list of claims to be paid in the amount of $262,827.29.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to accept list of claims paid in the amount of $2,360,490.24 and approve the list of claims to be paid in the amount of $262,827.29. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any further commissioner comments or questions? Hearing
Well,
none.
before we conclude, we should do some cleanup work here at the end of the year. We have this very nicely framed picture of our PUC president
Frame
that
that
we receive as they conclude their years with the PUC, and I think that's worthy of recognition. I believe Mayor Boisman is making his way to the podium, and he may have some kind words to say.
We have a little presentation award here, recognition award for service to the community by serving on the commission as a member from February 2007 to December 2015. Given this 22nd day of December 2015 to William Stanky.
Clap.
Appreciate it. There you go. All right.
The $100 bills.
Thank you. I just would like to say it's been an honor to serve with the commission and the city of New Ulm, and been a pleasure to work with everybody on the staff and very, very highly qualified commissioners that I've had a chance to work with. So, thank you. Meeting adjourned.